It has been several months since the loss of Outpost Goliath in Paleo Park to the Draconis Miriamus, so the Directorate of the MSU has approved the reclamation of Outpost Goliath. 250 hunters from the Hunters Guild and 750 helots, along with 200 security and scouting forces. The activation of Project Virgo has also been approved, and Virginia V. Vesta V will be sent to the outpost to lead the force. Our other outposts, including Ursa, Sigma, and Phantom, were more successful. However, the economic value of Outpost Goliath is greater than the other outposts combined. The human cost is regrettable. Project Virgo will have the power to overtake the entire outpost, even if the Draconis is still there. The Directorate will invest as much as it takes to make Primeval an economically viable investment. The following records were taken from H.O.N.O.R accounts during the reclamation. They were compiled and archived by High Observation Notes and Overreach. H.O.N.O.R allows for effective communication and control over the outposts in Primeval, even with infrequent information and updates from Earthside. Those on the primal side of the path are able to receive updates and help us help them. A note to the journalist who is receiving this information. Not everyone who is in these stories have survived. In 0. When I was approached, I was offered 20,000 centi just to listen, and another $250,000 upon the successful completion of the mission. At the time, I was an expert sniper helping to keep kaiju and leviathans away from the coast of Isle City. Apparently, the Mad Scientist Union needed help in getting a village or something back from some dinos in Primeval. I'm not a fan of traveling, but $250,000 is a really good deal. It is a lot better than what Isle City was paying me to ping bullets off Master Monday's eyes. So, when I had to leave, I said goodbye to my son, Peter, and goodbye to my husband, Todd. It hurt to say goodbye to them both. Peter was finally in secondary school, and he wanted to study in culinary school. Protecting Isle City from kaiju often meant that I had to skip many special events with Peter, but I had to keep him safe, and with this money, I could finally afford to take some time off. Maybe even afford a good culinary school for Peter. The kind of schools that came with connections, not just a degree. Before I left, Todd asked me for the password to the computer and the passcode. I just reminded him and I told him to put it on a sticky note next time, but he only smiled and kissed me in response. I don't need to memorize it when I always have you, sweetie. I smiled at his statement, and in my heart, I know he'll never remember it. It's a good way to get my attention and a good way to remind each other that we love each other. When I was loaded up into the ship, I was given this device called the A-phone and encouraged to record my thoughts and experiences into this device, so here I am. This is Hunter Sage of Isle City's Wave Watchers. It does have some fascinating apps, though. Apparently it plays music, videos from Share My Day, and pretty much all the apps on my phone, plus a few new ones. The MSU does not skip on their phones. My new A-phone was fully charged just by sitting in the sun for 5 minutes, and apparently it's bulletproof. And the oddest thing? It plays Doom, and it plays it really well. Well, might as well describe some of the others on the ship. Not everyone on the ship are hunters, like me. I saw plenty of others, and they saw me. Normally, we're competing for contracts, but a rare contract like this, where more is better, we don't compete and we share contracts with each other. We're sort of comrades in arms here. Even if we are rivals away from missions like this, at least we are professionals who understand the rules and how we all play. We'll swap stories and we're more comfortable with each other than we are with, say, the helots, or worst, the scientists. Apparently, the Imperial government has an interest in Outpost Goliath. There's a lot more helots here than hunters. The helots all look so sad. Their heads down and they're stuck in shackles this entire trip. They're not given any cool A-phones, and the only thing they can do for entertainment is talk to each other or glance through the bars to look at us on the deck. I know helots are enemies of the Empire who were captured to work off their crimes to us, but still it hurts to see how skinny and scared they are. They're still human beings, and they're still going to help us take an abandoned outpost that was taken over by dinosaurs. But they don't get paid like the rest of us. They serve the Emperor until they get paid, and they don't get paid extra for any extra work over the years of their servitude. During dinner in the cafeteria, they would watch us eat through the bars near the floor. Not enough space to reach through, nor get any food through to them. However, the smell of the food could still pass through, and they could still see what we were eating. But we couldn't make eye contact with them, nor could they make eye contact with us. It was cruel. It wasn't casual. It wasn't accidental. It was almost hellish. I know that helots are the bottom of the pyramid, but I didn't realize they were going to be tortured just by us eating. As I ate their sirloin steak and mashed potatoes, I couldn't help but notice the eyes glancing up at my plate, and I wish I could offer them something. But the food wouldn't fit through, and the scientists were looking at all of the hunters while we ate, and they whispered to each other. The scientists were the worst. They didn't speak to any of the hunters unless they were ordering us around. The way they talked, even to themselves, they didn't think of anyone else as having worthwhile thoughts or opinions. Even when trying to make casual small talk with them, they just kind of stared at me like I was an idiot. So I made my way away from them and I just spoke with my fellow hunters, and I tried to ignore the eyes glancing at my food and the pangs of guilt in my heart. Have you ever visited Imperial City? It's a lovely city for the most part, but there's districts where the homeless outnumber the people who live in homes. The city doesn't like doing anything to actually solve homelessness, but they still hate their own citizens. So there's spikes anywhere where someone can rest. There's gates at every doorway so no one can step out of the rain. But the cruelest part was the restaurant themselves. They have big windows so people can look in and the customers can look out. You can see people sitting on the street, staring at you while you eat, and you can tell how hungry they are, stuck looking at food they'll never eat. And the worst part, you can't help them. There's police on every corner enforcing Imperial City's strict no panhandling and no public food laws. Supposedly, they were introduced to make the city a safer place to live. What it actually did was make it harder on everyone else. If you see someone suffering on the street, starving, freezing, and dying, you cannot leave them a few coins to get something to eat. If you do so, that will make them a criminal in the eyes of the police, an easy target to strike. And if you try to bring food to them, then you're violating the law and you will be arrested. It's a firm reminder to everyone visiting Imperial City. Following the laws doesn't make someone good, and breaking the law doesn't make someone bad. Quite a few villains in the area, such as Mach 5, are well loved because they're the ones who are willing to bring food to the homeless and escape being caught. That was what this all reminded me of. A powerful leader who didn't actually want to help people, but wanted to punish as cruelly as possible. A reminder, not just to those suffering, but to anyone who wanted to ease the suffering. See how badly I can make them hurt? I can make you hurt. just as badly. I'm going to bed now. I will speak more tomorrow. Today was interesting. We passed by the Outpost Hotel, and when we ate breakfast, I could see more hungry eyes looking our way. This time, a hunter by the name of Jordan asked the scientists when the helots were getting fed. Apparently, they told her it was 9 p.m. tomorrow because dogs needed to remain hungry to stay loyal. So she punched that scientist and broke his jaw. After breaking up the fight, the scientist was taken to the infirmary and Jordan was confined to her quarters. But the helots got fed, so I'm sure she's glad she broke the scientist's jaw. We're not allowed to text her right now, but we have to head to the deck for passing through the path. I will update later. Kin 1. So, we just went through the path, and that was why I wasn't allowed to keep the A-phone on. We all had to remove the battery from the phones as we passed through the gate. Those jaws. It truly looked like we were entering through the jawbones of some long-dead titanic beast. But they were stone, not bone. They were definitely stone. I had fought every type of kaiju and leviathan on the planet. None of them got anywhere near it as big as this impossible stone monument. On the deck, we were all in awe of the teeth as the ship passed through the fangs, with equally large teeth underneath the water. We passed by, seemingly only a few centimeters beneath the keel. Inside the skull, all of our technology was turned off, with batteries removed. As we made it to the center of the skull, where the waters of both oceans mingled. Where we entered from, we could see the daylight of the world we came from. And ahead of us, we could see dim stars and a dark sky twinkle from the other end. An exit that was invisible from where we came from. The other end of the path. The exit that would spit us out into primeval. Spit us out. That was an accurate phrase when we passed through the teeth. On the other end, one head of Kukulkan ate us, and the other spat us out. Once we passed through the teeth, power was restored to the ship, and we were allowed to put our batteries back into our phones. And officially in the Gukamat's Ocean, the boat began to make its way southeast. First to Outpost Sigma, and then to Outpost Goliath to reclaim it. The night sky was enchanting. I had seen the sky all over the planet. I saw the millions of stars and the clouds that formed up the Saga galaxy. It was hopeful to see a sky so full of stars, so full of life, hope, and light. The skies of primeval weren't like that. There were still stars, but they were a lot fewer. Still in the hundreds, but that was the problem. It was in the hundreds. The night sky was still a dark blue, but with a lot fewer stars, it felt darker, lonelier, colder. Even in the warm night air, I still shivered. There was no galaxy above, just the few weak stars and a spot of the sky that no stars were at all. Wherever Primeval was, the galaxy was still young, and it seemed we were a lot closer to the center of the galaxy, if there was such a large void in the sky. And then the next part I didn't realize until a little later, but when I realized it, it was no less shocking than the stars. There was no moon. I heard one of the scientists talking about how Primeval had no moon at all. That was enough to tell me that we weren't in Earth's past like some people believed. And we certainly weren't in our galaxy anymore. The cosmic significance of what was happening above was overwhelming enough to look away from the darkness above to the darkness below. Even in this distant world, the ocean still sounded the same. I could hear the way it lapped at the hull as we pushed forward at night, heading towards the distant outpost Sigma. I headed back to my cabin and I read over what my A-phone had on the map of Primeval. Turns out it had an old-fashioned continent map. There were about 7 named continents compared to Earth's 6 continents, and 2 large islands with 1 named archipelago. Most of the islands on Primeval were unexplored and therefore unnamed, but even among the continents, they were mostly just mapped at the coasts, with much of the interior still a mystery. Hence why outposts Ursa and Goliath were so important. Ursa was an operational outpost at the Arctic biome of Cope, and Goliath was meant to be the outposts that would explore Primeval's largest continent of Alvarez. The one part that mystified me then was, if the outposts were meant to study the continents, then what was the point of Outpost Sigma and Outpost Phantom? I pressed my thumbs on Outpost Sigma and I got a quick pop-up about the outpost. Apparently, the isolated dinosaur archipelago was the metaphorical and literal gold mine of Primeval. Outpost Sigma was the first successful outpost in Primeval. What happened to the first 17 outposts, the A-phone didn't say, but apparently it produced megalodon teeth, lumber, oil, iron, gold, and other valuable materials. So it also served as the central hub of all economic activity on Primeval. It even had a functional tourism industry. The island served as a safe from larger creatures, while the ocean was shallow enough to avoid the larger sea creatures. A bit like those wildlife tours offered in Mayquill. It had enough safety that people could do it without dying, but just enough air of danger that people could take their pictures with a Deinonychus and pet an Apatosaurus and post to share my day that they petted a Brontosaurus, without a single hint of irony. After getting that information and a quick scan of the public houses in Outpost Sigma, before I flipped over to the location of Outpost Phantom, and I pressed on it, only to have almost no information about Outpost Phantom. When I pressed on the location, the only information that was there was Outpost Phantom is an MSU outpost on Primeval. Even the name of the island it was on was not shown. None of the islands near Outpost Phantom were named, and our route would take us nowhere near Outpost Phantom. If anything, our route took us much further away from Outpost Phantom, and quite possibly it cost us more fuel to get us all the way to Ida before heading to Outpost Goliath. I am not an idiot. I know that the MSU doesn't want us to know anything about Outpost Phantom, but if that was the case, they could have just said that the outpost studied soil samples, or it was a place to scout out ice cores for climate study. Something safe, boring, and would answer a question. Still, by actively hiding its purpose, it made everyone question why it was on the map. Kin 5. It has been a few days since my last entry. Sorry, a few kins. The days are shorter here, so the scientists insist that everyone calls it kins. Weirdos. But changes. They started feeding the helots every day, so I don't feel guilty every time I eat something in front of them. I also got a firmer understanding of my job. Apparently, they don't just want to kill all of the creatures in Outpost Goliath. They want us to either catch them, tranquilize them, or at least tag them for tracing. And the best part, we are getting paid a bounty for each of them. We get the biggest bounty for capturing them and tranquilizing them, but we have to bring them back and pay the second most. And tagging them pays the least, but even just tagging them pays very well. If I get even a few of these creatures, I can get enough that we can finally retire away, somewhere far away from Isle City. Maybe Sunset? But to break down the bounties, basically the larger the creature, the larger the bounty. And the creature they're calling the Draconis, that pays a quarter of a billion centi just to tag it. Not a quarter of a million, a quarter of a billion. 250 million centi. If I actually captured it, I will be counting out copper by the billions. So yeah, everyone is on fire about catching that Draconis. However, myself and a few others know better. Sure, 10,000 centi for catching a Dimetrodon isn't a lot. However, you're more likely to find 100 Dimetrodons than one Draconis. So, working on the smaller creatures would still pay me well. Also, we were issued some modified standard infantry rifles. They weren't powered by gunpowder, but by gas canisters. Our guns would fire either tracking darts or tranquilizer darts towards the creatures. However, they would require our A-phones to unlock, and our phones would keep track of what we shot and also who shot what. That way our bounties would be shared fairly. I guess that works, but I definitely prefer my sidearm over gas-powered tranquilizer darts. Oh, and we are also going to make it to port on the northernmost island of Ida tomorrow. So sadly, we won't be anywhere near the public houses, hotels, gift shops, and theaters of Outpost Sigma proper. So I guess tomorrow we load up some supplies and we deliver some supplies to port when we arrive, and then we leave the day after. I don't think anything will happen while that is happening. Kin 7. Well, that fucking happened! So, where do I start? When we made it to port, they finally let the helots out of the brig hold. The downside? They put the helots to work. They were our stevedores, unloading crates of hard drives, flash drives, and numerous blank disks, only to then have to load the ship up with steel cages, crates of darts, and even modular containers that would serve as building material when emptied. Naturally, when almost all of the hunters, myself included, protested, the helots doing all of the work, Dr. Vesta told us that if we felt it was unfair, we were welcome to help them out. While most of the hunters protested the way the helots were treated, being asked to load up the boat, I want to say maybe half of them offered to help. And after the first hour, only 10% were left. And at that point, it was less about it being unfair to the helots and more about doing what I thought was right. Even with my son Earthside, I wanted to do something that I knew would make him proud. Even though, honestly, how much of a difference did us helping really make? The only thing the scientists saw was the ship was loaded quicker than they expected. The helots were still exhausted and I got blisters on my hands and feet. But when we finished, I admit I had no small amount of pride to hear that we finished 3 hours early, only to be crushed to hear that we would be leaving at the same time to catch the tide. That night I got to soak in my tub and I ate up ravenously, but when I saw those eyes behind the bars, eyes that looked defeated and dead, so dead that the helots didn't even bother talking to me while we worked alongside each other, I realized even if they fed the helots that night, they wouldn't have a tub to soak in to get better. They would have to nurse their blisters for 3 kins on our trip to Outpost Goliath. I want to apologize to them, but I don't know what to apologize for. I helped them out the best I could. I didn't capture them. I didn't put them in cells, and I sure as hell didn't make them work. But still in that cafeteria, I couldn't help but feel guilty as I ate. Kin 10. Funny how a trip across an alien ocean can get boring. But mostly I have been taking the last 3 days to mermaid in the tub and look over the information in the Dinodex app. That thing has just about everything. Preferred environment, food intake, how many doses of tranquilizer to take them out, and even their calls. One of the scientists mentioned the person who made it also named the Draconis, so that's interesting. Still, though, we are finally pulling up into Outpost Goliath, and I can finally see it. The wall is visible from the ocean, and it looks like it is still standing, so presumably the anti-tank barriers beyond it are still standing since they're also concrete. As for the rest of the outpost, the towers were all knocked down and broken into pieces with the rebar underneath twisted and melted like they were made out of sugar crystal. The mortars were melted into slag that cooled into useless scrap, soaked in ash and dirt that would take a lot of effort to recycle into anything usable. The cafeteria was little more than shattered concrete and ash. Thankfully, the bunkers look like they're still standing, and the docks themselves are surprisingly untouched by the fires of the Draconis. However, the pride of Outpost Goliath, Paleo Park, it was gone. A burnt pile of ash where it once stood. On the ship, we couldn't even see the concrete foundations or the twisted remnants of steel. It was all destroyed, with nothing left. Looking it over, I could break down what happened. The Draconis was hungry and went for the paddocks first, consuming all the creatures within, but when the guards tried to stop them, the Draconis defended itself and attacked them, hence why the towers were knocked down but not the walls. The bunkers were untouched because evacuation procedures said to head to the towers during a dinosaur attack. Still, though, if this was what it was like in Outpost Goliath, then maybe there's no dinosaurs left to hunt in the outpost proper. This job may be just providing security for the helots and scientists while they got the outpost working again. I have to go. We are heading to shore. In 11. Well, my initial guess was correct. There were no dinosaurs left in the outpost, and Paleo Park was in worse shape than I thought. Even the concrete foundations were torn out by the Draconis. If I was to guess, it was looking for more food. There weren't even scavengers left over. The cafeteria was ruined, so we had to eat on the ship again. But we got to sleep in real beds again. Even the helots had their own bunkers. Locked from the outside, of course. It is more than a little concerning that the scientists who built this place had designed bunkers specifically for helots, even when they first came here. Then this morning I got up early and I brought my Sir with me, even though I didn't think I would find anything, only for me to see a bunch of flying reptiles standing on the dock, dipping their bills into the water to grab a tasty fish. They weren't hunting like normal. They had learned to use the dock as a way to get easy access to fish. I fired a few shots into the flock and 3 of them fell over, while the others all flew off. I don't think they'll be coming back right away, but I should still pay attention. If the creatures were adapting to human infrastructure without humans, they may not be afraid of us. Still, my Dinodex registered me as catching 3 Dimorphodons, small pterosaurs that had 2 unique sets of teeth and a wingspan of 4.6 meters, a little bigger than a pelican's. Still, after getting those 25,000 centi bounties, the Dinodex also confirmed when I got closer to them they were new subspecies never before catalogued, and rewarded me an additional 10,000 centi. This almost felt like a game. Still, I dragged the heavy bird lizards to a large aviary cage and shut them in with a combination lock. And when the rest of the outpost started waking up, Dr. Vesta congratulated me on my find, while the other hunters murmured among each other, while the scientists all lined up to congratulate me. Almost the exact opposite of how it was just a few days ago, and I don't think I like it. None of the other hunters are speaking to me anymore, and now I think the competition is on. I asked Dr. Vesta if I could head out into the jungle tomorrow. She agreed. Tomorrow I will head into the primeval jungle. Tonight I will go over what I can get in the local biome, and I will prove to the hunters that we can all thrive together. Surely there's a lot of creatures we can get tomorrow. Kin 12. So Dr. Vesta approved it not just for me, but for all hunters. At breakfast, it was announced that all hunters are encouraged to go hunting to try and capture as many creatures as possible. The tranquilizer darts would have trackers, and the creatures would be gathered by the scouting security teams and returned to the cages. This would give all of the hunters a fair chance to get a few bounties. This is almost way too easy. I barely hiked into the jungle beyond the anti-tank barriers before I ran across a gigantic snake. It must have been 10 meters at least. But a single dart with a tracking microchip, 15,000 centi later, and I moved on. I can see why MSU loved this location so much. It's unofficial, of course, but I have done some unofficial work for scientists in the past. Endangered species are big business, especially in the exotic pet community, but species that are extinct? Well, big money doesn't come close to describing it. Science needs funding, so if they have an area where they can get plenty of creatures both to study and to sell off, well, then surely they're going to take advantage of it. There was also a bunch of large insects. Sadly, no bounties on them, but I am thankful as fuck that the bug repellent given to us works on them. I saw a meter-long scorpion walk by, and I immediately decided to go the other way. That was where I found the large Dimetrodon. It reclined in the swamp water, tongue out, tasting the air, with its sail on its back, gently swaying in the air as it dimly looked towards me. My Dinodex confirmed the largest of these get are 4.6 meters. But the one I saw in the swamp was at least 8 meters long, and the best part? On her back I could see numerous little Dimetrodons crawling along her back. Crocodiles and alligators did something similar with carrying their babies on their back. Apparently that applied to ancient synapsids also. Oh right, that was another fact from the Dinodex. The Dimetrodon wasn't a reptile, it was a proto-mammal, a synapsid, a very early ancestor of all mammals. That would make this one just so valuable. I aimed my sights and I fired just beneath her neck. She yawned when the dart hit her skin, and then she stretched out to pull herself partially up onto the shore before closing her eyes and taking a nap with all of her babies on her back. I took a picture and asked Dr. Vesta if I was getting extra for the babies. An alert on my Dinodex for 250,000 centi confirmed it for me. As I continued deeper into the jungle, looking for something larger, something that would make me even more money. This trip was already proving profitable, and if things continued like this, maybe I'll just sign up to work with the MSU full-time. I have no idea why they were struggling so much to begin with. I'm heading further south where the map says the grasslands meet the jungle. Maybe I can meet a big game animal, or maybe a big game hunter. Dinodex does say that Tyrannosaurus rex lives in the grasslands. However, they're apparently scavengers, not predators. So, just like other large scavengers, they should be real easy for me to hunt. I will update later. Kin 15. Fuck me, fuck my life, fuck my choices, and most importantly, fuck you, MSU. I can't communicate with Outpost Goliath or anyone from the Outpost. My iPhone just keeps saying they're out of range. These things can communicate with Earth from anywhere in Primeval. No way in hell I am out of range. I have to be only 20 kilometers away, at the most. Sorry, deep breath, start from the beginning. My name is Hunter Sage, and I'm about to die. When I last updated, I followed large tracks leading from the jungle to the grasslands. It was clearly a large theropod, or two-legged dinosaur, carrying something heavy. I figured that would be my Tyrannosaurus Rex. I fucking figured right, but I also fucking figured wrong. When I made it to the ridge, I saw the nest. There was a single large female dragging over trees and rocks to make a bowl shape. She had a large hadrosaur, the duck crest dinosaur, corpse near her, that she had half eaten already. The first thing I noticed was that the creature was feathered, covered in gray feathers along most of its body, and mostly covered on its neck. But the face was clear feathers. And the next thing I noticed was how much bigger this tyrannosaur was than I expected. At the hips, the creature was easily as tall as a 2-story tall building, and the creature was longer than a city bus. I lined up my shot, all of my darts filled with 10 darts ready. My dino decks immediately buzzed and made a loud alarm when the tyrannosaur was lined up in my shots. The noise made her perk up and look towards me, while I pulled up my phone to read the notification. I was up safe on the ridge. She couldn't hike up the rock safely, and since she was a scavenger, surely she would be more scared of me than I was of her. My dino decks had a single warning in red text. Do not hunt Tyrannosaurus Imperator. When I read that, I gulped. The Imperator was a proposed variation of T-Rex, supposedly 20% larger than the largest known T-Rex, and unlike being a scavenger, it was a predator. I glanced down to where the T Imperator was, and I saw as she backed up a few steps and came running towards the ridge. I took my hint and I ran into the jungle. As I bounced off as quickly as I could, I made a mistake of turning around when I reached the tree line. I saw as the dinosaur leapt over the bridge, almost flying towards me as I ran into the trees. Thankfully, she did slow down in the trees, but I could hear the sound of logs cracking, and I could almost feel her breath on my back as I ran, trying to get away from her. And I found a small cave in a cliff not too deep, but wide enough for me to get into without letting her inside. I ran into the cave, and the T Imperator snapped her jaws mere centimeters behind me as she stood at the entrance. I stared back at her, and even though I was standing very still, she just stared back at me. It wasn't like the movies. Even staying still, she could still see me with those deep yellow eyes. And I saw something in those eyes. Wisdom. She wasn't wise in a way that a human was wise, but she had the wisdom of a being that survived as an apex predator, that came from a long line of apex predators. She would be patient, and she would wait for me. In her eyes, I was just a small animal, a threat to her nest, and one that would need to be dealt with. So we sat there, waiting. I tried firing all of my darts at her while in the cave. I could line up the shots easily, but none of the dots penetrated her scales nor her feathers. Even when fired at her eye, she just blinked without a single dart staying. I couldn't tranquilize her, and I couldn't put a tracking dot in her. Out of desperation, I checked the dino decks for some information that might help. Apparently, large dinosaurs could sometimes go months without eating, and they could go up to 2 weeks without drinking water. So I'm screwed there. My water was drunk a long time ago. At first, I was confused about why she was hunting me. I would not be able to feed her much, and there's much larger prey out there that would be easier to catch. I thought I could wait for her to fall asleep, but when the sun started to set, she laid down at the entrance of the cave, blocking my access but leaving just enough space for air to enter the cave. She was incredibly intelligent. Having seen that wisdom in her eyes, I knew she wasn't hunting me for food. She saw me as a threat to her nest and her soon-to-be laid eggs. So she would get rid of me, one way or another. So that was where I stayed for 3 kins, as I tried to contact anyone to help me. For some reason, I kept getting a notification from something called H.O.N.O.R saying they were beyond reach. I tried licking the dew off the walls, but I quickly learned that I was losing more water than I was gaining doing that. I even tried my sidearm against the T Imperator. I think I made her bleed a little, but it stopped quickly, so it was barely a flesh wound, and I don't have any more reloads. So now I have accepted my death at this point. Dehydration will get me in hours, so before I become too delirious, I am leaving my last message as part of the legacy protocol. I want my bounties given to my son in Isle City. That should be enough money to pay for his culinary school and to give him enough to escape that shithole of a city. I'm not scared of dying. I'm scared I won't ever see him graduate. I won't walk him down the aisle. I won't be able to tell him I love him anymore. Let my son know how I died. Let him know that I love him very much. And let him know I sought out the bounties because I wanted him to have a better life than me. My son, I'm sorry. I missed so much of your life growing up, and I'm sorry we won't have any more next times. No more times for me to catch up with you, to make it all up with you. I know judgment is coming for me, but just know that whatever comes for me afterwards, I am glad I had you as a son. You're the best son any father could have asked for. I don't care what your mother says. I am glad you are the way you are. The world is already in a better place just because you're here. And I know that you will be a truly great hero just by following your dreams. I love you. And for my ex-wife, I will see you in hell, bitch. If you so much as raise your voice at Peter, I will claw my way out of hell to haunt you for the rest of your miserable life. And for my husband, the password is our song, and the passcode is our anniversary. Karuti Phi Galagas Tisawag. From H.O.N.O.R. Messages were passed on per legacy protocol. 1,235,000 centi paid to Peter Sage of Isle City. The time of death is placed at 11:46 p.m., May 31st, 2776 AUC. May Hunter Sage's memory always be a blessing.